Christmas, a time for family, love, and joy. At least that's what I thought, until I uncovered a secret that shattered everything. I had planned every detail to ensure it was a Christmas to remember, but sometimes the perfect plans are the ones that fall apart the fastest. My name is Jennifer Collins, and this is my story. Before I continue with my story, please subscribe to this channel and like this video. Tell us where in the world you are watching this video from. Now let's continue. I live in Miami, Florida, with my husband, Tom, and our two beautiful kids, Jackson and Sophia. We're the typical American family, comfortable, happy, with everything we could ask for. I've always worked hard to maintain this image of a perfect life, and Tom, well, he seemed to be right there with me every step of the way. For years, we've built this life together, and for years I thought we had it all. But that Christmas Eve, everything changed. It started like any other Christmas. The lights twinkled brightly in the windows of our cozy home. The table was set, the roast was in the oven, and the kids were eagerly awaiting their presents. Tom was in the living room, helping Jackson with some last-minute wrapping. The air was filled with warmth and laughter. To anyone looking in, it was the picture of a perfect family. I smiled, watching my children in their excitement. This was the life I wanted for them, a life filled with joy and peace. The kind of family Christmas everyone dreams of. Little did I know, beneath this perfect image, something far more sinister was quietly brewing. As I walked into the kitchen, my phone buzzed. It was a message, just a simple one, nothing out of the ordinary. It was from Tom. "Dinner looks amazing, babe. Can't wait to share this with you." I smiled at the sweet message until I noticed something strange. Beneath it was a message he had left open, a text from someone named Rachel. I paused. My eyes scanned the message. At first, I thought I was reading it wrong. I had to be, but the words were clear. "I can't wait to be with you tonight. The kids are away and no one can stop us now." My heart dropped. Who was Rachel? And why was she sending my husband such intimate messages? I stood frozen, my mind racing. I had to be imagining things, I told myself. But the sick feeling in my stomach said otherwise. What if it wasn't a mistake? What if Tom was hiding something from me? I could feel a wave of nausea threatening to take over, but I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. My whole world, my entire life, felt like it was slipping away with every passing second. The moment I realized everything was a lie. I stared at my phone, trying to make sense of what I had just read. The words on the screen felt like they were mocking me. How could he do this? How could Tom, the man I trusted with everything, the man I had built a life with, betray me like this? The room around me began to spin. I set the phone down on the counter and gripped the edge to steady myself. It felt like everything was closing in on me, and I could barely breathe. I wanted to confront him, to scream, to demand answers. But I couldn't. Not yet. I wasn't going to let him off that easy. He had no idea that I knew. I quietly grabbed my jacket, feeling the cold air hit my skin as I walked out of the house. I needed space to think, to breathe. It was a Christmas Eve like no other, one that would change everything. I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't believe it. But the truth was staring me in the face. Tom was having an affair. I couldn't just sit back and let it happen. I had to know more. I had to get to the bottom of this, no matter how painful. I knew that confronting him would be too obvious. He would lie, deny, and try to make me doubt my instincts. No, I had to be smarter than that. The kids were upstairs, playing with their new toys. Tom was in the living room, talking to Jackson, who was wrapping a present for Sophia. This was the perfect moment. I needed to follow him. I needed to know if he was really seeing her. So I waited. An hour passed. Then Tom put on his jacket and said he was stepping out. He told me it was for a quick errand. I watched him from the window as he drove off. My heart was pounding in my chest. I grabbed my coat and slipped out the door behind him. I followed him, keeping my distance, as he drove to a place I didn't recognize. My stomach churned with each turn, and by the time he parked, my heart was pounding so loudly in my chest that I could barely hear anything else. I parked down the street, keeping my eyes trained on his car. I watched as Rachel stepped out of the building and walked toward him. My vision blurred as I saw them embrace. The scene felt like it was in slow motion. It was like watching a nightmare unfold before my eyes. I couldn't take it anymore. I got out of the car, my legs shaking as I walked toward them. My hands were trembling as I approached, and for a brief second I thought about turning around. I thought about going home, pretending I hadn't seen anything. But I couldn't, not anymore. "Tom," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He turned to face me, his face pale. His eyes widened in surprise, and his hand instinctively reached out toward Rachel. But before he could speak, I cut him off. "Don't," I said coldly. "Don't even try to lie to me." Rachel took a step back, her face showing no emotion, but I could see the fear in her eyes. I could see the truth in her gaze. She knew this was coming, and I wasn't about to let her off easy. "You were right, Tom," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. "You've been seeing her. You've been lying to me, and you think you can just get away with it. You're wrong." I felt a surge of anger rush through me. Everything, every moment I had spent trusting him, was nothing but a lie. The perfect family, the perfect Christmas. It had all been a lie. I turned to Rachel, narrowing my eyes. "And you think you can just waltz in here and take my husband away from me?" I shook my head, disgusted. "Not today." The confrontation ended in silence. Tom, unable to speak, stood there, defeated. Rachel had nothing to say either. It wasn't the explosive confrontation I expected. It was worse. The silence hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I walked away, leaving them behind. I didn't need to hear their excuses or their lies anymore. I had seen enough. But as I drove home, my mind raced. What would I do now? What was I supposed to do with this knowledge? What could I do? The anger, the hurt, it was building up inside me, a storm I couldn't control. One thing was clear. I wasn't going to let them win. Not this time. This was my life, my family, and I would get the justice I deserved. The perfect Christmas was gone, but my revenge, that was just beginning. What would you do if you found out your partner was cheating on you? Would you confront them? Or would you plot your revenge? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video if you're ready to see how my story unfolds. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Subscribe for more of this revenge stories. The hours after I saw Tom with Rachel felt like they stretched on forever. I barely slept, my mind reeling with the truth I had uncovered. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my family, was slipping through my fingers like sand. Tom had betrayed me, not just once, but for months. I wasn't sure how to feel anymore. Anger, disbelief, hurt, all of it mixed into one overwhelming sensation. But one thing I knew for sure, I wasn't going to let this go. Tom was going to pay for what he did. The next morning, the house was eerily quiet. The kids were still asleep, and Tom had left for work. Or at least, that's what he told me. But I wasn't sure I could believe anything he said anymore. I walked around the house in a haze, trying to keep myself together. The holiday decorations that had once brought me so much joy now felt like a cruel reminder of the lie that had been my life. I tried to focus on the mundane tasks, cleaning, preparing breakfast for the kids, but my thoughts kept returning to Tom and Rachel. My phone buzzed, pulling me from my thoughts. It was a message from Rachel, and at that moment I wasn't sure what I expected to see. Was it an apology, a confession, or was she gloating, rubbing in the fact that she had taken my husband? I opened the message with trembling hands. It read, "I know you saw us last night. I'm not sorry, Jennifer. Tom has chosen me and he's not coming back to you." I stared at the words. A chill ran down my spine. The audacity. Rachel was taunting me, making it clear she had no intention of backing down. Tom had chosen her, and she wasn't afraid to make me feel it. I didn't respond to the message. Instead, I spent the next few hours stewing in my emotions. How could she be so brazen? How could Tom allow this to happen? He was the one who had promised to love me, to protect me, and now he was out there, in the arms of someone else. I couldn't just let it end like this. I had to confront him, but this time I wouldn't go in empty-handed. I needed more than just a simple confrontation. I needed to expose everything, show him exactly what I knew. So I did the only thing I could think of. I reached out to Rachel. The phone rang, and my heart raced as I waited for her to pick up. The moment she did, I almost regretted making the call. Her voice was calm, almost too calm, as though she knew exactly what I was about to say. "Rachel," I said, my voice trembling but strong. "We need to talk." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then she spoke, her voice dripping with arrogance. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Jennifer. I thought we already had everything out in the open." I could feel my blood boil. "You think this is over? You think you've won?" I paused, trying to steady my breath. "Tom may have chosen you, but I'm not going down without a fight." There was silence on her end, and I could tell she was trying to keep her cool. "You think you can win him back? You think you have the upper hand here?" she scoffed. "Let me make something very clear. Tom wants me, not you, and there's nothing you can do about it." Her words stung, but I refused to let them break me. "We'll see about that, Rachel. We'll see if you can hold on to him when everything comes crashing down." After hanging up, I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. I had confronted Rachel, but I knew the hardest part was yet to come. I still had to face Tom, the man I had spent over a decade of my life with. The man I had trusted, built a family with. I didn't know how to face him, but I knew it had to be done. I needed to make him feel what I was feeling. I needed to show him that he had lost everything, his family, his home, everything we had built. And I would do it in a way that would make him regret this affair for the rest of his life. The next few hours felt like they dragged on. I kept my mind occupied with thoughts of revenge, planning my next steps. I couldn't just let this slide. There were children involved, and Tom needed to understand the gravity of what he had done. Finally, the door opened, and there he was, Tom, looking as calm as ever. He didn't know that I knew, but his eyes seemed to be searching for something in mine. Maybe he thought everything was fine. Maybe he thought I was oblivious. But I was. I wasn't the same woman I was the day before. "Jennifer," he said, his voice soft. "What's going on? You've been acting strange since last night." I didn't answer him right away. Instead, I took a deep breath and said the words that would change everything. "Do you want to explain why you've been meeting Rachel?" I asked, my voice icy. Tom's face paled. His eyes darted around, as if searching for an excuse, but he knew there was no getting out of this one. How do you know about Rachel?" His voice cracked, and I could see the panic in his eyes. "I saw you," I replied simply. "I followed you, I saw everything, and now I want answers." He took a step back, his face filled with shock. "Jennifer, please, this isn't what you think. It was a mistake." "A mistake?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "Don't you dare tell me it was a mistake, Tom. You've been lying to me for months. You've been lying to our family. And now you're going to stand there and act like nothing's wrong, like you didn't just destroy everything." His face twisted with guilt, but he didn't know how to respond. There was nothing he could say that would undo the damage he'd done. The trust we had was shattered, and no words could fix it. I could see the weight of my words settling on him. He was finally realizing the gravity of the situation, but it wasn't enough yet. I wasn't done. "You've made your choice, Tom," I said coldly. "And I'm not going to fight for a man who doesn't want me, but I will fight for my family. I'll make sure you remember this day for the rest of your life." Tom looked at me, his expression full of regret. "Jennifer, I never meant to hurt you." I didn't let him finish. "Save it, I've heard enough lies." And with that, I turned and walked away. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me break down. Not now, not after everything. As I walked out of the room, I could feel the anger building inside me. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. What would you do if you found out your spouse had been hiding such a big secret? How far would you go to get justice? Have you ever had a moment where everything seems to be spinning out of control, but you can't show it? Like you're holding everything together on the outside, but on the inside it's chaos. That was me, walking around my house like it was any other day. I was smiling at my kids, making sure dinner was perfect, all while my heart was shattering into 1,000 pieces. And every minute that passed, the anger inside me grew. The pain turned into something darker. I wasn't just hurt anymore, I was furious. Tom didn't know it, but he was walking on a razor's edge. I had already confronted him, but he hadn't felt the weight of it yet. He was still in denial, still acting like we could somehow fix everything. But he didn't realize that I was playing a very different game, and he wasn't going to know what hit him until it was too late. The days after I found out about the affair were a blur. I spent most of my time pretending like everything was fine, pretending like I didn't know what was going on, pretending that I wasn't falling apart inside. I couldn't let anyone see it. Not Tom, not the kids, no one. I had to keep up appearances. I had to act like the perfect wife, the perfect mother, like nothing had changed. But every time I looked at Tom, I felt disgusted. Every time he smiled at me or tried to hold my hand, my skin crawled. He thought I didn't know. He thought I was clueless, and that made everything worse. It made the pain sting that much more. I'd wake up each morning with a heavy heart, and by the time the day ended, I was drained, emotionally exhausted from pretending. The worst part? I couldn't even talk about it. I had to keep it to myself, because I didn't know if I was ready to expose the truth yet. I watched him closely, too closely maybe. It became an obsession, picking up on every little detail, every look, every word. I saw the way his phone screen lit up at odd times, always when he thought I wasn't paying attention. I saw the way he'd smile at texts and quickly lock his phone when I walked into the room. He wasn't even trying to hide it anymore, but he thought I didn't notice. I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I had to make him feel the weight of his betrayal. But I also knew that if I confronted him again too soon, I'd lose my chance. He was still holding on to the idea that I might forgive him, that I might let it slide. But I wasn't going to let him off that easy. I needed to watch him, wait for the right moment. So I played the part. I spent the next few days being the picture-perfect wife. I made him breakfast every morning. I took care of the kids like nothing had changed. I smiled when he walked through the door at the end of each day. He didn't know what I was doing. He didn't realize that each smile, each word, each meal I prepared was a silent act of revenge. And the more I did it, the more I began to relish the thought of his guilt eating him alive, piece by piece. I knew that if I wanted to destroy him, I couldn't just confront him head-on again. That would be too easy. No, I had to build it up slowly, keep him on edge, make him question everything. It was time to take things up a notch. One evening after dinner, I noticed Tom getting a message on his phone. His usual reaction, the quick glance at the screen, followed by the immediate lock, didn't escape me. He wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. It was Rachel again. I knew it. I could feel it. So I did what any woman who's been betrayed would do. I took matters into my own hands. I waited until he went to bed. Then I quietly slipped into the living room, grabbed his phone off the table, and unlocked it. My hands were shaking, but I couldn't stop now. I had to know. And there it was, Rachel's name, right at the top of the screen. I scrolled through their messages, each one more intimate, more personal than the last. And then I found it, the message that broke me. I can't wait for this to be over. We're going to be together forever, Tom. I'll make sure of it. My stomach twisted. I felt like I was going to throw up. I didn't know what was worse, the words themselves or the realization that Tom had been planning to leave me for her. It wasn't just a fling. It was a plan. He had already made up his mind. He had already chosen her. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at the phone, numb. It felt like everything I had worked for, everything I had built, had been ripped away in an instant. But then I did something I hadn't planned on. I sent a message to Rachel. You think you've won? You think I'm going to just walk away from everything? You're wrong. It was a small act, but it felt like a huge victory. I wasn't just going to let her take my husband away from me. I wasn't just going to sit back and let him think he could get away with this. The next few days were tense. Tom had no idea that I knew everything. He was still acting like we could fix things. He even tried to be romantic, suggesting we go out for dinner, acting like nothing had happened. But I could see through the charade. I could see the guilt in his eyes, the nervous glances. He was walking on eggshells, and I was enjoying every second of it. But I wasn't done yet. I couldn't just confront him again. I had to break him down slowly, make him feel the weight of his actions. And the best way to do that was to make him question everything. I decided to test him. I started casually bringing up the topic of the affair in front of him, but in a way that he didn't expect. I'd mention how I'd read somewhere about couples who were unfaithful, how it always led to feelings of guilt and regret. I'd talk about how some people never get over their mistakes. Tom would always stay quiet, his face turning pale as he realized I was talking about him. But he never asked me outright how I knew. He was too afraid, too guilty. I watched him crumble slowly. Every time I brought it up, I saw his resolve weaken just a little more. But he didn't know it yet. He didn't know that the real storm was just around the corner. It was late one night when Tom finally came home looking like he hadn't slept in days. He was anxious, his usual charm gone. He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. He walked into the kitchen where I was making tea and tried to touch my shoulder. "Jen, let's talk, okay?" I pulled away and he looked hurt, but it wasn't the hurt of a man who cared. It was the hurt of a man caught in a web of lies, a man who didn't know what to do next. "I think you already know what's going on, Tom," I said, my voice steady but cold. "And I'm done pretending I don't." He looked at me, his face falling. "Jen, please, let's work this out." I shook my head. "It's too late for that. You've already made your choice." And just like that, the calm before the storm was over. Tom didn't have any more lies left to tell. "What would you do if you were in my shoes? How would you handle the situation? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're hooked, like this video and subscribe, because trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next." You know that moment when everything you thought you knew about your life shatters in front of your eyes? That gut-wrenching realization that the person you trusted the most, the person who promised to love you forever, is the one who's been tearing your world apart from the inside. That moment happened for me. I reached my breaking point. I had spent the last few days pretending, trying to keep up the act of a perfect wife and mother, but inside I was dying. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and most of all, powerless. Tom was still clueless about the full extent of what I knew. He still believed that somehow he could charm his way out of this mess, that maybe we could fix it. But I had no intention of letting that happen. The day started like any other. Tom was at work, the kids were at school, and I was home, left alone with my thoughts. It was the perfect moment for me to reflect on everything that had happened. Rachel, Tom's affair, the lies, the betrayal. I thought about how close we had been, how much I had trusted him. He was my husband, the father of my children. I never thought he would be capable of something like this. But here I was, picking up the pieces of a broken heart, and all I could think about was how to make him feel the weight of his betrayal. I wasn't just going to let him walk away with no consequences. And that's when it hit me, the idea. I wasn't going to confront him again. I wasn't going to yell or scream. I was going to break him down, slowly, methodically, coldly. I didn't need to expose him in the heat of the moment. I didn't need to see the guilt in his eyes. What I wanted was to see him suffer, not in front of me, but behind my back, without him even realizing what was coming. It was late in the afternoon when I saw her, Rachel. She was standing across the street, just outside of the coffee shop, casually sipping her drink as if she had no care in the world. I knew what I had to do. I watched her for a few moments, just taking in the scene. I wasn't sure what had driven me to do it, but in that moment, I knew I had to confront her. Not Tom, her. I walked toward her slowly, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts, but my steps were steady. She saw me coming, and for a moment, her eyes widened in surprise. But then her face quickly shifted to something else, something cold and calculated. She wasn't scared. She was smug. I stopped right in front of her, keeping my voice calm, though my insides were burning with rage. "You don't know me, Rachel," I said, keeping my tone low but firm. "But I know everything about you, and I'm not going to let you destroy my family." She took another sip of her coffee, unfazed. "Oh, I know exactly who you are, Jennifer. Trust me. Tom and we've been planning this for months. He's just too scared to tell you. But you're right. I am going to destroy your family, because you're no longer enough for him." Her words hit me like a slap across the face. But I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I just smiled, a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Keep thinking that," I said. "But don't get too comfortable, Rachel. You may have taken him from me, but I'm not done yet." And just like that, I walked away. As I turned the corner, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of satisfaction. She had no idea what was coming. I spent the next few days carefully crafting my plan. Tom was oblivious, still thinking that I was just going through the motions. He was still hopeful that everything could go back to the way it was. But what he didn't realize was that his world was about to be turned upside down. The tension between us was palpable. Every time I walked into the room, I could feel his guilt hanging in the air. He tried to make small talk, but I was distant, cold, even. I had to stay in control. I had to keep my emotions in check until the moment was right. Then the night came. It was time to set everything in motion. I had arranged for Rachel to be at the same party that Tom and I were attending. It wasn't a coincidence. I wanted her there. I wanted Tom to see how much I knew and how little I cared. The party was held at one of our mutual friends' houses, one of those fancy, high society gatherings where everyone tries to outdo each other. The drinks flowed freely, and the chatter was constant, but the tension between Tom and me was undeniable. He knew something was off, but he had no idea how much I knew. The moment I had been waiting for came when Tom walked into the room, his face lighting up as he saw Rachel standing across the room, looking just as smug as ever. I watched his expression falter for a brief second before he regained his composure. But I could see it in his eyes. He wasn't ready for what was about to happen. I walked toward him, my heart pounding, but my face as calm as ever. "You've really outdone yourself, haven't you?" I said, my voice cutting through the noise. "Bringing her here, in front of all our friends, you must be so proud." Tom's face drained of color. His eyes darted around the room, but I could tell he was lost. He had no idea what I was talking about, but I could see the panic setting in. "Jen, I didn't give him the chance to explain. Instead, I turned to Rachel, who was still standing there, pretending she wasn't enjoying every second of this. "You think you've won, don't you?" I said to her, my voice steady, but I could feel the rage bubbling beneath the surface. "You think you can just waltz into my life and take everything from me? Well, you're wrong. I'm not going to let you destroy my family." Rachel's smile faltered. She had no words. She wasn't ready for me to turn the tables. "Rachel," I said, my voice low and dangerous, "you can have him, but you'll never have this." I gestured to the room, to the life we built. "You'll never have what I have, no matter how hard you try." The room was silent. I could feel the weight of the moment in the air. Tom stood there, speechless. He had no idea how to react, no idea what to say. I knew he wanted to apologize, to beg me for forgiveness. But I wasn't interested in his apologies anymore. I wasn't just angry. I was done. I turned and walked away, leaving Tom standing there, staring after me in shock. Rachel didn't say anything either. She just watched me, her expression unreadable. But I knew I had won. I had made my point, and the look on Tom's face, that was all the satisfaction I needed. Have you ever seen someone walk right into the trap you've set for them, unaware of the consequences? I was about to experience that firsthand. Tom, the man I had trusted more than anyone, was falling right into my hands. I had spent weeks crafting my plan, letting him believe that everything was fine, all while preparing to break him completely. And tonight was the night everything would come crashing down. The tension between us had been building for days. His attempts to be the charming, loving husband felt hollow now. I knew the truth, and nothing he could say or do would change that. But I wasn't interested in confronting him directly anymore. No, my revenge wasn't going to be messy or loud. It was going to be calculated, controlled. I had spent so much of my life trying to please him, trying to keep our family perfect. But now, I was done. It was time for him to feel the weight of what he had done. Tom had no idea that everything had already started to unravel. He still thought that if he played his cards right, he could smooth things over with me, that I might forgive him. He was wrong. I had no intention of forgiving him. Not now, not ever. The damage he had done was too deep. He tried so hard to make things feel normal, asking me about the kids, suggesting we go out for dinner, even texting me sweet things like nothing had changed. But I could see through it all. His words were empty, his touch felt hollow, and his smile no longer reached my heart. I kept playing my role as the perfect wife. I prepared dinner, I took care of the kids, and I smiled when he walked through the door. But inside, I was counting the moments until the perfect moment to make him see what he had truly lost. He couldn't hide from the truth forever. The night began like any other, but this time something was different. Tom was acting more nervous than usual. I knew why. He could feel it. He could feel the tension in the air, even though I had been calm, distant, almost too composed. It was a dangerous kind of calm, the kind that made people nervous. We were at a small dinner party hosted by friends of ours, a casual gathering of familiar faces. Tom and I had been attending these types of gatherings for years, but tonight it was different. This wasn't just any party. Tonight, Tom was going to be exposed. I had made sure Rachel would be there. She had no idea that she was about to play a part in a scene she wouldn't soon forget. I had made sure that everything would fall apart in front of our friends, in front of everyone who mattered. Tom thought he could have both worlds, his family and Rachel, but he was about to learn a hard lesson about loyalty and trust. As we walked into the party, I could see Tom scanning the room. He was looking for her, I could tell. He thought I wouldn't notice, but I did. And just like that, I was in control. The moment Rachel walked in, everything changed. Her presence was like a punch to the gut, a reminder of everything Tom had done to me. I watched as Tom's eyes immediately locked on hers, his expression faltering for just a split second. His facade cracked, but he quickly masked it, trying to act casual. But it was too late. I had seen it. And now, it was time for him to see what I had known all along. I waited until we were seated at the dinner table, surrounded by our closest friends. The conversation was lively, but I wasn't paying attention to anyone but Tom and Rachel. I could feel his unease growing with each passing moment. It was like he knew something was coming, but he couldn't figure out what. I casually picked up my glass of wine, taking a sip, before turning to Tom with a calm smile. "You know, it's funny," I said, my voice cutting through the noise of the conversation, "how some people can pretend everything is fine, even when it's not." Tom's face immediately froze, his eyes locked with mine, a silent plea in them. But it was too late for that. The seed had already been planted, and now I was going to let it grow. "Isn't it true, Rachel?" I asked, looking directly at her. Rachel's face stiffened for just a second, but she quickly recovered. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said with an innocent smile, but the tension in her eyes gave her away. I leaned forward, my voice barely above a whisper, but loud enough for Tom to hear. "It's funny how you two think I wouldn't find out. How you thought I wouldn't notice the late-night texts, the secret meetings, the lies, but here we are, and I'm done pretending." The room fell silent. Tom's face turned pale, and I could see the panic beginning to set in. He reached for my hand, but I pulled it away, my eyes never leaving his. Rachel shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her eyes darting between me and Tom. She wasn't prepared for this. Neither of them were. Tom opened his mouth to say something, but I didn't give him the chance. "I know everything, Tom," I said, my voice steady, but the weight of my words cut through the air like a knife. "I know about you and Rachel. I know how long it's been going on. I know you've been planning to leave me, but I'll be damned if I let you get away with it." Tom's face was a mask of guilt and regret. He opened his mouth again, but I wasn't going to let him speak. "You can't take back what you've done," I continued, my voice growing colder. "You've already broken everything, our family, our trust. But I will make sure you remember this moment, Tom. I'll make sure you never forget the day you lost it all." The room was still. The tension in the air was suffocating, and I could feel every pair of eyes on me. Everyone at the table had gone silent, watching the scene unfold before them. But the moment wasn't about them. It was about Tom, about him realizing the consequences of his actions. Tom's eyes filled with panic, but his voice barely made it out. "Jennifer, please, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you." "Too late for apologies, Tom," I said sharply. "You've made your choice, and now you'll face the consequences." I stood up abruptly, cutting him off. I couldn't stand to look at him anymore. I couldn't stand the way he tried to make everything seem like it was still fixable. It was. As I walked toward the door, I could feel Tom's eyes on my back. But this time, I didn't care. I didn't need his validation. I didn't need him to beg for forgiveness. I had already taken control. Rachel was sitting there, watching, her expression blank, but I could see the regret in her eyes. I had won. She had won nothing. I've heard that revenge is a dish best served cold. But I didn't just want to serve it cold, I wanted to make it unforgettable. Every single day since I'd uncovered Tom's betrayal, I'd felt the weight of it all. The lies, the deceit, the way he made me feel like I was nothing but a fool, standing in the shadows while he played his little game with Rachel. But no more. It had been weeks since the dinner party, and Tom had no idea what was coming. He thought I was broken. He thought that I might forgive him if he begged enough, if he said the right words, or maybe if he played the role of the loving husband long enough to wear down my anger. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I wasn't the woman who would sit in silence, pretend to be the perfect wife while he tore me apart from the inside. No, I was done. Tonight, I would give him the final blow. It was a Friday evening, and the kids were at their friend's house for a sleepover. Tom, as usual, was working late. The house was empty, just the silence of the walls around me. But I wasn't alone. I could feel the weight of everything I'd been building, all the emotions I'd kept bottled up for so long, and now it was time to let it all out. My plan was finally coming to fruition. I had spent the last few weeks watching Tom, studying him. I knew his weaknesses, his habits, his guilt. Every time he tried to make amends, it only pushed me further away. Every time he looked at me with those eyes full of regret, I could feel my anger boiling over. It wasn't enough to just expose him anymore. I needed to make him feel the consequences in a way he would never forget. And tonight was the night it would happen. I took a deep breath, packing the kitchen. I had already prepared everything, the perfect setting, the perfect moment. Everything was going to play out just the way I wanted it to. There was no turning back now. Tom came through the door around 9:30, just like clockwork. He walked in, casually tossing his jacket on the couch, his phone buzzing in his pocket. He didn't notice the subtle tension in the air, the stillness that had settled around me. He didn't realize that tonight would be the last time he'd ever take me for granted. "Hey, babe," he said with that false cheer in his voice. "Everything okay?" I didn't answer him right away. Instead, I took a slow sip from my glass of wine, my eyes never leaving his. He looked at me, his expression unreadable, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. He had no idea what was coming. "Tom," I said, my voice steady, but there was an edge to it now. "We need to talk." He froze. His eyes widened for a moment, and he immediately went into damage control mode. "Jennifer, what's going on? You've been acting different lately. Please, just..." "No," I cut him off, my voice hardening. "It's time you know exactly how I feel." Tom's face fell. He could see it in my eyes now, the anger, the betrayal, the hurt. But I wasn't going to let him apologize his way out of this. I wasn't going to let him play the victim again. "You've spent so much time pretending," I continued, my tone growing colder, "pretending like everything is fine. But you know and I know that nothing has been fine for a long time." I paused, letting the words sink in. "You didn't just break my heart, Tom. You broke this family, and I'm done." His face twisted with guilt, and I could see him starting to panic. He stepped closer to me, reaching out, but I took a step back, keeping my distance. I wasn't going to let him touch me, not now, not ever again. "Jen, please, let's talk about this," he pleaded, his voice desperate. "I messed up, I know I did, but I'm trying, I swear." "Stop," I interrupted him, my voice sharp. "You had every chance to make this right. You had every chance to fix it, but you didn't. You thought you could have both worlds. You thought you could keep Rachel and keep me, that I'd be some sort of fool who'd just go along with it." My voice was growing louder, more emotional now. "But I'm not that woman anymore. I'm done being the fool." I could see the panic rising in his eyes. His breathing quickened, and his hands trembled slightly. Good. He deserved to feel the fear, the uncertainty. He deserved to wonder just how far I was willing to go. "I don't want you anymore, Tom," I said, the words flowing out of me like a tidal wave. "You've ruined everything, and I'm not going to let you waltz away thinking that you can just fix this with some empty apology." He looked at me, speechless for a moment. It was like he was trying to process what I was saying, trying to understand how we had gone from the perfect couple to this. He took a step back, clearly shaken, and I could see the doubt creeping in. "Please, Jennifer," he begged again. "Please, I'll do anything. I know I messed up. I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you." I shook my head, cutting him off. "You didn't just hurt me, Tom. You hurt our kids. You hurt this family. And now you're going to lose everything." The silence hung in the air for a long time. Tom was speechless. He had no idea what I was going to do next. He had no idea that I had already planned my next move, and that it would be the final nail in the coffin of our relationship. I walked into the living room and picked up the envelope I had left on the coffee table. Tom's eyes followed me, his confusion growing. I opened it slowly, savoring the moment. "I've already contacted an attorney, Tom," I said calmly, pulling out the papers. "I've already filed for divorce. You've been served." His face went pale, his eyes wide with shock. He looked at the papers, then back at me, unable to speak. The words finally sunk in. "Jennifer, you can't," he started, but I interrupted him again. "You don't get to make decisions anymore, Tom. Not about me, not about our family. This ends tonight." The reality of it hit him like a ton of bricks. The weight of the truth crushed him, and I could see the regret and panic flood his face. But it was too late for that now. The damage had been done. I stood there, watching him crumble, watching the man who had once been my whole world realize that everything was over. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. I had finally taken control. So did he get what he deserved? You bet he did. But what about me? Well, sometimes the best revenge isn't just about making them regret it. It's about taking back the power you thought you lost. Thanks for watching my story. If you've ever faced betrayal or if you believe in justice served cold, don't forget to hit that like button, share this story, and subscribe for more revenge-filled tales. Leave a comment below. How far would you go for revenge? Let's talk about it.